Live?
Yeah.
We are. Okay, we're live. It looks like it's not going through there. Oh, okay, we're live. Hi, everybody. This is Sherry Grunska. Welcome to our Monday Night Live webinar, and and that's Trisha's iPhone. She's having it's delayed. Okay, yay! Come on in, and we're going to talk about some fun stuff today. Welcome to Pro Barn Management. I'm Sherry Grunska, and you can text me at 920-205-7518 if you have a question while we're talking for this hour, or you can just type it live. And oh, I can see people. Hi, Sherry. And just go ahead. You can start asking questions. We're going to talk about the barn tour and why it's one of the most crucial parts of your horse boarding stable and the business. If you don't get this part right, your life is going to be kind of a nightmare. If you get this part right, it'll make your job a lot easier. So we're going to go forward, and as we start talking, just hop on and ask questions. And I'm going to talk about some questions I had already, and also, if you haven't been to my website, you can check out probarnmanagement.com. I have my podcast on there. I have all these webinars and lots of interesting things we talk about on there, blogs, and I also do consultations. So I hope you check it out. And we're going to get started. And Trish, if you have questions, because it's hard for me to read the screen at the same time that I'm talking, so Trish will let me know. So anyways, tonight's webinar is about the barn tour, and I know a lot of people probably thought, oh, that doesn't sound like a very interesting webinar to talk about, because it really doesn't. You might be thinking it doesn't have to do much with the whole daily meat, the nuts and bolts of running your boarding business, but actually it really is kind of the beginning of your business, because it's the first time you actually meet the person who could be a boarder at your stable. And if you don't get this part right, I'm serious, it's going to make your life crazy. And the other part of it too is how you start out giving barn tours and what you do during that is going to change as you figure out what you can do at your stable and what you can't. And so the first thing I'm going to start off by saying is when we first opened in 2005, I had an empty barn. We had built this 26,000 square foot barn, and I had to fill it with all these horses and people. And so I was giving tours constantly during the building process. And every person that came to our stable to check us out, to meet us, to see what we were building, I don't think I said no to anything. I said yes to everything they asked me. Yes, we did this. Yes, we did this turnout. Oh, yeah, you can put your horse there. Oh, yeah, you can put lights in the stall. Yes, this, yes, that. And I had no clue what I was getting into, and all the yeses that I was saying, really, I just had no idea what that would mean work-wise, what it would mean expense-wise, and how it would make my job so much harder. So if you're a yes person, I'm going to try to talk you into being a no person when it's the right time to say no. And if you say yes to someone but your heart is telling you you should have said no, then you really need to rethink it, because I said yes a lot of times and then walked in my house knowing full well, and this is years into our business, I'd say yes to someone, they'd sign the boarding contract, and I'd say yes to requests they had, and then I'd walk in the house sick to my stomach because I knew already that I should have said no. And it's really important. So we're going to get you to toughen up and say no to some things. Learn to say the word no. We don't offer that here. It's so important, because you're going to be asked so many things, and you're going to have to really get a grasp on what you're saying yes to. Okay, so we're going to start off. And I want to also say, when you are giving the barn tour, I can't express how specific you need to be. And a lot of times when people come to my barn and I give a barn tour, not only am I specific, I give them a sheet that says everything that we do and how we do it. And the reason I do that is because they are not always listening to what I'm saying. So they'll walk in our barn and they might be in a bad situation right now where they're at. And they want to get out of there fast. They are not listening to probably 3/4 of what I'm saying. They're just shaking their head. Yes, 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 I'm so happy I want to be here. Yes, I love the way the place looks. Yes, 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 yes. And they're not listening to me. And then what happens is they get to the barn and a couple months into it, all of a sudden something happens and they say, well, I didn't know that. You never told me that. Or I don't think I like it done like that. So we're going to talk about some of the issues. I'm going to share some stories on what I've had happen to me that were super eye-openers. And I'm doing it because I want to help you guys out. So, and I also did get some questions, so I want to talk about that. But the biggest thing I want to talk about right now when it comes to your barn tour, and this is the weather. So if you are from a different state than Wisconsin, tell me where you're from. I want to see, because right now we're really cold. We are pretty much below zero. We have been for the last few days with wind chills. I think my husband said tonight the wind chills could be around minus 21, 25. So we've had our horses in both barns for the last 4 or 5 days. And it's just, we have no shelter out in our paddocks for the horses that get turned out daily and then come back in a stall at night. So we have someone from, hi Amy, from Iowa. Hi.
And Alabama.
And Alabama, hi there. And so the weather has been really cold, and this is what happens, and I'm going to play this out for you so you understand, because whether it's cold or storms, whatever it is, I want you to learn why it's so important to be clear with your clients. Right now our horses have been in because it's really too cold to put them out, because if it's windy and we have wind, it's just really cold. We don't want to do that. So we leave them all in their stalls. And what happens is that adds on now another element to it, and that means those horses want to be out of their stalls because they're used to going out all day long. And you have some horses that need to be worked, or horses that need to just get out and stretch their legs. And you could have clients that become very frustrated because the horses are in more than they prefer. And you could have clients that feel that horses should go out in any weather, no matter what, and that's fine if that's how they feel. But they need to understand how you do it at your stable. If you're the kind of stable that puts your horses out no matter what the weather is, that is great. But you need to explain that to your boarders that come for a tour. When someone comes for a tour, and you get really super cold weather or really extreme hot weather, and you don't have shelters out there because they're just on turnout for the day and then they come in at night, I want you to really be super detailed in how you explain when you turn horses out. So for example, when someone comes to our stable, they'll say, you know, do the horses go out every day of the year? Are there times they stay in? And I always tell them, when we get down about 5 degrees or below, and you have a wind chill of the negative, we keep the horses in. And that's how we do it. And so they know that up front. They know that if they want their horse turned out, we're not going to do it when the temps. And you got to be really clear. And so about 4 years ago, I had a situation. Well, it was 3 years ago. I think we had the coldest winter on record. Was that 3 years ago in Wisconsin? It was like we had below 0 and 0 degrees for like 30 days. It was it was Narnia. It was awful. And everyone wanted to put for sale signs in front of their barns and sell their farms. It was awful. Well, I had a family who had bought a horse, and the horse was for their child, and it was really too much horse for the child. And also it was a horse that was tended to be hot. And during that really cold spell, I think we had probably, with the wind chills, it was like minus 40 degrees. It was crazy, crazy cold. And we kept all the horses in. And the people became very frustrated and upset with me because their horse needed to get out and be exercised, because that was the type of horse it was, and it was younger. And they felt they couldn't handle the horse, and they wanted me to put this horse out all by itself, because that's what we do. We turn horses out, and I wouldn't do it. I wasn't going to put the horse out all by itself in wind chills of minus 45 degrees. And they wanted it sold for the reason because they were hoping the horse would get some of its energy out. And I knew mentally that wouldn't be good for the horse. I also knew that this particular horse was very thin-skinned, and I knew that it would just be really too cold for the horse. And I just wasn't going to do that. And they became very frustrated with me. And it was the worst winter we'd had on record, and they couldn't see past that 2-week period of really cold weather. All of a sudden, the barn that they were so happy to come to in the summertime when the weather was beautiful was now not the right barn, because they didn't like the care under extreme situations. They couldn't realize, even when I tried to explain to them that it was a really extreme situation with the weather, they did not get it. And they ended up leaving. And you know what, it was for us, it was good for them to leave. They needed to go where they would put their horse out no matter what the weather was, and I wasn't going to do it. So that's what I mean by being very specific and explaining how you do turnout in different types of weather. The other thing is, I had one lady many years ago say to me, well, if the horses are out and you have a really bad lightning storm come in to the area, are you going to make sure the horses are all in time? Well, we got to be really realistic here. And she didn't like my answer. I gave her a tour. She never came to my barn. You know, if I have 27 horses out in the pastures, there is no way I'm going to be able to get them in time if a storm comes in that fast. Now, we watch the weather constantly, but the reality is they have a better chance of being okay outside in the pasture. You know, they're going to be fine. It's not the best case situation, and you try to beat those kind of storms and get the horses in before that kind of storm, but you know, there is absolutely no way you can race to get all those horses in, especially if they're running around when the storm hits. They'll have to weather the storm. And she felt like I didn't take it seriously, but the thing is, she has to understand storms can pop up, and I'm not going to sit with Weather Channel on 15 hours a day to see what's happening. And you know, you try your best to get the horses in, but once in a while things happen and they're out in the storm, and you have to wait till that storm passes before you can get the horses in, especially if it's lightning. We try our best, but you know, sometimes freak storms just come up and you're just trying your best to get the horses out of there, especially, you know, the horses that come in the big barn. We try to get them out of there because they have no shelter. And she ended up not coming to our stable, and looking back, that was a good thing, because she would have been upset every time a rain cloud came over, because I could tell by the conversation she was just pretty worked up about that. So, you know, it's kind of, in some ways, you're vetting them, and they need to be doing their homework and asking you. So I appreciate the fact that she asked me. She told me that she wanted something where they could get the horses in quicker, and it worked out. She knew what to look for, I knew what to look for, and it worked out good. It wasn't a good fit. And so that's, you know, weather is so important, whether it's summertime, For those of you that live in some really hot states, for example, I was just talking to a couple down kind of on the West Coast, and it gets very hot there, and they were asking me about turnout during the day because it can get in the hundreds, 106. Well, not in the hundreds like 200, but like 100, 105. How do I do it here? And so I said for here in Wisconsin, when it gets where we have the heat index is really high and, it's 100 degrees and it's really humid, because we don't have shelter for the horses in our daily turnouts, then what we do is we usually get them out real early in the morning and bring them in around noon. And the barn is really cool. It's much cooler. There's fans going. But that way they got out in the morning. So I'm really kind of specific about that too. Now the thing about weather, which is sometimes really hard to kind of read with a person, is when you have a new horse owner, they honestly have not thought all those things through. And a lot of times they're trying to humanize how they feel on the horse. So because they're cold, they feel their horse must be cold. Or if they're hot, they feel their horse must be miserable. You're going to do some educating there, and you try to figure that out in there. And part of it is growing. But I think it's so important. Weather is probably one of the most difficult parts, because when the horses have been in for 4 or 5 days, sometimes you'll have clients that will become frustrated if their horse is in because they want their horse turned out. And if you have a boarding stable and you have a larger number of horses, you can't, it's very, I don't think it's good business to say, well, some horses you'll put out and some horses you won't. It makes your job very confusing for the people who want their horses out and for the people who don't want their horses out on cold weather. I don't do it that way, because it's just, then you're doing yes to this, no to that. It becomes kind of nuts. So I'm more at the school of thought that when we call the horses in and they're in for the day because of the weather, if the boarders want to put their horse out for the day for a few hours, they can do that on their own, but they need to bring them in by the time it's dinner time. And I'm totally good with that. And I think it's worked out beautifully here. It gives them a little bit more control if they want their horse out when we've left them in. And so I just want to talk about weather, because especially if you have all 4 seasons, it gets nuts. Do you have any questions?
I have one question.
Okay.
Do you not do arena turnout, and if not, why?
Oh, that's a good question. So we don't do arena turnout. We don't even offer it. Now, a lot of barns do, and you can, but with 27 horses, it's a lot of extra work, and we just never have. They can pay me to turn their horse out and let them run or walk them, and I'll do that, and they can pay me to do that, but I don't do it for free. And some people might look at that as it could hurt their business. I'll be honest with you, it's never hurt my business. You got to remember, there's no perfect stable, and you have to decide what you want to do and what you want to offer. And we're a pretty big facility. At the biggest, when we had the most horses here, we had, I think, 42. Now we're downsizing. So we have 34, which is still a lot of horses, but it's a lot of work. And we just have chosen not to offer that, the arena turnout for that. And the other thing is, it's hard to do arena turnout when you have people that come in the morning to ride their horse, or they come to do this or do that. Now they want to use the arena, and there's horses in there running around. We just decided we didn't want to do it for us. But there are barns that offer it, and it's a great perk. And I don't know personally if it's going to make a difference if a client's going to choose your barn or not, because our horses actually, up until this last week, I think our horses were only in 1 day in December, or 2 days in December and 1 day in January. We had a fantastic winter. And so you know, I mean, when you look at the whole scale of an entire year, if a person's going to choose your barn to board at because of that 1 week or two of inclement weather where the horses are in, that to me is not the best reason to choose a barn, because there's so many other important things to choose a barn for. The hay they feed, the care, herd management, is the horse happy, thriving, you know. If that one little thing is what bothers someone enough, like the people that left our stable, they left because of that. They couldn't see beyond that, because after they left, the weather got better. We moved into springtime, and we had a beautiful year. But that 1 week upset them so much. And you got to remember, some people are kind of tunnel vision, and they just can't see past that. I say let them go. I'm not going to sit there and beg someone, and I'm not going to change my entire way of doing things because one person might be upset because the other 99% of your clients are happy with how you're doing it. They also understand that it's such a small window. So yes, you can do turnout while you're cleaning stalls. I just don't. We just have so many horses, and it would just be, we have a certain way we do it, and I just haven't. And it's a perk, but it's a perk I'm willing, I'm comfortable with not doing it that way. So I hope that answers your question. Okay?
We have a comment
Okay.
after that just said, when it's really hot and humid, we do night turnout.
Yeah, you know, a lot of places do. Thank goodness we don't have that type of weather here too often. But I know a couple barns that do night turnout, and I think it's a great option. You know, if you're set up for it, you definitely can do it. But if you're gonna do it, make sure your clients or the people coming for a tour, make sure this is all stuff that you explain to them and they understand that. Just so they're not surprised. You know, I know some barns down south, because it's so hot way down south, that they do night turnout, and it's totally normal. Totally, I think it's good to do. We're lucky here in Wisconsin. We have terrible winters, but we have beautiful summers. So we just don't have, you know, it's only a few days that we bring the horses in early, so it works out good. That's a good point, though.
Another comment on that note.
Okay.
She says, here we have many days of ice, mud, terrible heat, and bugs, so it's much more than 1 or 2 weeks a year for them.
Where are you at? Who is this?
Ontario, Canada. Catherine.
Oh. Hey, Catherine. Yeah, you guys, we're having your Arctic blast right now. What is going on? You guys do have it. I mean, it is tough up there. So I can understand why you really have to modify how you do things. Because you guys, I shouldn't even complain, but when I look at the news and I see the Arctic blast coming down to Wisconsin, I'm like, what is going on? Push that way back up. You guys really do have it tougher than us, so I should not complain at all. But yeah, and you know what? I think turning out in the arena is great. It's just I don't do it. It's a nice perk to have, and I have not. For here in Wisconsin, it's not that they've been in so much that we would really have to rethink that. But if you're in an area where the horses are in for weeks and weeks at a time, or in the spring we'll have mud, and we'll have it, we could have a bad week of mud. When the frost is coming out of the ground and everything is thawing on top, there's a week in there where it's a week or two where it's just a mess. Last year I don't think it was too bad. It depends how much rain we get, and we have clay soil, so then what makes it even worse is when the clay is starting to harden. It's definitely tendon pulling kind of mud and shoe pulling kind of mud, because they get out there and you can just see their legs just pulling up. And I don't want to have tendons pulled and, shoes just start popping off. So in the spring, depending on the weather and how much frost is in the ground, and if we get a lot of rain, we'll have the horses in also during that time. to get them out of that until the clay kind of firms up enough that we can put them out there. And it happens every year, and people here at our barn know it just kind of is the way it is. Now, this is a really kind of an important point, too. This can be kind of frustrating. It was frustrating to me for quite a few years, and I've learned to kind of toughen up and realize you just can't, there's nothing you could do about it. And what I'm talking about is what happens during a period when you have horses in for a week or two because of the weather. You could have boarders that become frustrated, and then what makes it even more challenging is when they drive around and they see other stables where the horses are out. So then they come to see their horse is stuck in their stall, and they drive around and they see another barn where the horses are out, and it makes them upset, and they wonder, why are the horses out there and they're not out here? And it happens, and people talk and they compare, and they'll say, oh, the horses are out at this stable, or why, the thing is, most boarders that have, most of them have never owned a farm. They don't understand the layout of your land. They don't understand the type of soil you have. And all they're seeing is a visual of seeing horses outside. They honestly don't even know what kind of situation those horses are in. They might be driving down the road and just become frustrated because those horses are outside and yours have been in for 5 days. During the spring, this tends to happen because at our barn, we're really low. The ground is real low, so if it's the perfect combination, our horses will be in. They could be in for 5 days while that mud is getting firmer. And it could be sunny outside, and it's really drawing everything up, which is great, but the horses are still in the barn. And if you have people that get frustrated, that is where you're going to have to educate them on this, because they have no clue what can happen if you put your horses out in certain types of mud. I'm not talking about the wet, sloppy stuff, because we'll turn our horses out in the wet, sloppy stuff, because I know they're going to be fine. It's the real thick stuff, especially if it's clay soil, that starts to firm up, and you can just see them pulling. And I don't have that problem anymore, because I've had boarders here that have been here for years, and they know how we do things, and they can almost call it when I'm going to keep horses in and not. They're real good about it. But I get once in a while, I'll get someone, they'll say, well, how come they're able to do it like this down the road? And, the thing is, every barn is set up differently. The water drains differently at every stable. Some barns have sandier soil, they drain better. And then the truth is, some barns just put the horses out no matter what. And I guess I look at it as I'd rather have my own horses in and not have pulled tendons than have them out because the boarder is upset or frustrated at me, and then just to appease them. So that is why when you have a barn tour and you have someone that is, you need to show them and you need to tell them. And I don't believe in sugarcoating it. I did when we first opened, because I wanted to get boarders and I was insecure, and I honestly, I don't, when I look back to those days, I really didn't know what I was doing. Now I just spit it out, and I just tell them we get mud in the spring, and there could be a week where they're in because of the mud. And I'm really frank with them, and I just say, I just want you to know that. Are you okay with that? And, if they're not, then we're not the right place. But usually they're okay with it, because they can look at the big picture of the entire year. So that's why weather is so important, and it's probably one of the most important parts, especially like anyone like up in Canada, which you guys even have more extreme weather than us. It's really important to get that across to clients, and sometimes you have to educate, and sometimes it's just not a good fit. They don't get it. And that's okay. You're just trying to get a clientele that understands how you do it and is willing to work through the bad weather and the mud and be okay with it. And so I hope that answers that. Any questions?
We do have another one.
Okay.
It's about bedding. What kind of bedding do you use, and how much do you allow per week per horse?
Okay. Well, that's a good that's a good transition because of the tour, the barn tour, and bedding. So I'll start off by, when someone comes to our barn, they come in our inside, and I'll start off by showing them, you know, we have 27 stalls here, they're 12 by 12 size, and then I open a stall so they can see the bedding. And I'll be honest with you, we don't bed heavy. We do use bulk bedding, so I'm sorry. My friend Trish is getting sorry. She's crunching on something next to me. It's okay. She's I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. We're having fun here.
I'm sorry.
Okay, pull it together, Sherry. So anyways, I hope you guys can laugh with us because we do a lot of laughing. So when someone comes, they'll open our stall, and the first thing they'll see is there's not a lot of bedding. We don't bed heavy. And I can't tell you how important that is to explain to people that, you know, we don't bed heavy, because there are going to be people that want a heavily bedded stall. So if you're going to bed heavy, great. You know, show them the stall and show them how you bed. If you don't bed heavy, show them how you bed and say, this is how we do it. Now, this is where it gets kind of, it can get complicated, and I'm going to try to simplify it for you. If you don't want people to bed heavier than what you want, or ask for heavier bedding, then tell them you don't offer it unless there's a fee, or unless it's for a medical situation. So, for example, we have a horse in our barn who gets a little bit heavier bedding because they get hock sores, and they pay for it, but it's not a horrendous amount of bedding. You need to understand, no matter what with your bedding, it's labor, it's cost. So yeah, there's a dollar amount on it. So I would say, if you're going to bed heavy, go ahead, show them how you do it. Show them, do you clean once a day, twice a day? You know, do you clean on holidays? Is important to let them know. Do you clean on Sundays? So we don't clean on Sundays, and we don't clean on holidays. And I tell them that right away. What they do at our barn is they come out and clean their own stalls if they want, or they'll buddy up with someone, or they'll pay someone. But to me, it's kind of like having a day off, even though I'm not having a day off, because if you have a boarding stable, you work 7 days a week. So, but I just feel like, as honest as you can be, you just say, this is how we do it. So as far as cost, I don't give any extra for that unless it's a medical reason. So I hope that answers your question. Was that all that was on that particular question?
Yeah, how much do you use
Okay.
per horse?
So without giving, you'd have to almost see our stall. But I think in my book, this book, A Step-by-Step Guide to Starting and Running a Successful Horse Boarding Business, I think I have a picture in here of one of the stalls and how they're bedded, and that'll give you an idea. We have screenings down in a 12 by 12, which hard packs, and then we have rubber mats over them. They're 3/4 inch mats. So there'd be like 6 in a stall, they're 4 by 6. And there'd be 6 of those in the stall, and then we put the bedding over it. And we usually put the bedding like halfway back, and then we have the front part clean, and by the next morning it's all trashed. But that way, my husband likes to put the hay on the floor in the front by the corner feeder, and it's fresh and clean, and then all the bedding is kind of halfway back. So I hope that helps with that.
Your 2 more questions.
Okay.
Somewhat unrelated.
Okay.
How large are your paddocks for turnout?
Okay. So our paddocks are, we have quite a few paddocks, and a few of them are different sizes, but we have a maximum of 6 horses. That's the highest number we've ever put in a herd, is 6 horses. We have quite a few paddocks right now with like 4 horses. We have one with 3, one with 6, and one with 5, and a few with 2. But they're around 130 by 130, somewhere in there. per paddock, and it's a nice size. It's we have pastures attached to every one of those paddocks, so the horses can go out even to a bigger area, but right now they're closed off because of winter, and we do get ice out there, and we don't want them trashing the grass because we want the pastures to come in real thick in the spring. So I think they're 130 by 130 around there, and most of, except for one group that's 6 horses, the rest are smaller than that, and it works out really nice. So,
And one more. How do you terminate a boarder even though they pay on time?
okay. The terminate the one, I'm going to get back to that in 1 minute, because will you do me a favor and write Tricia, and they pay on time, but let me know a little bit more. Is it like personality issues? Is it safety issues? What are some of the issues on that? Okay. And then, so another thing about, I had someone write in a question about a tour, and this one was about pregnant mares. And they wanted to know, what do you do if someone comes and they, you know, they have a pregnant mare? Will you take a pregnant mare? And what I wanted to say on that is, and how do you price it out? If you're going to have the mare, are they going to be in a foaling stall, which is bigger? And how are you going to do that afterwards, and with turnout for the mare and the foal, and during that first, you know, few months and stuff. So this person who wrote me this, I actually ended up talking to them on the phone, just because they're in the process of making some changes, and they have a situation like that. So we ended up talking on the phone, but I'll tell you what I told her. I said, you know, if you want to do that and you want to have people come with pregnant mares, I think there's nothing wrong with it. It's great. Just make sure you're set up correctly for it, because you're going to have a lot of extra work and challenges and needs that mare and baby are going to need. And they're not going to just be able to fit into your regular boarding stable operation. If your gut is telling you you don't want to deal with that, then just say, no, we don't offer that here, and it's okay. I've had people ask me through the years, if we would do, you know, like someone's wanted to breed their mare, and could they, you know, would they be able to stay at our barn? Or if someone came for a tour and they asked, you know, they want to breed their mare, could their mare come here? You know, I think when I was younger, I thought it would be really fun to do that, and I toyed with the idea. We have huge stalls in our small barn that would be perfect for foaling, and that wasn't the problem. The issue came a little bit after, as the baby grew, and figuring out a place for them, and then eventually separating them, the whole thing. And I just realized I wasn't really set up for that, for babies, and the work part of it, and how that looked for the dynamics of the whole barn. I didn't want to move an entire herd of horses because I had to put this mare and baby somewhere for, you know, 3 months or 4 months. I had to look at the big picture of the entire stable, and I have boarders that had been here for years, and their horses are set. And even though they might all be together, you start moving them all around and you're going to have chaos. I didn't want to do that, so it wasn't worth that for me, even though I thought for a brief moment it would be really fun. I just didn't want to do it. But if you want to do it, I think go for it. As far as the extra costs involved, I can't tell you, because honestly, if I was going to take on someone like that with a mare, I'd probably have to go to my neighbor down the road who breeds horses all the time and find out exactly how she does it and do it right. And then I would make a price from there. So I would tell this person for a tour, I would consider it, but I'd have to get back to them and have a price to be determined kind of thing. But since I haven't dealt with that, I've dealt with a lot of youngsters, 5-month-old babies that have come through through the years. And even them, you have them in a separate place for a while. So that is, again, another place, figuring out where they're going to go, and it's a little bit more work. So just remember, if you're going to do special services like that, I can't stress enough the importance of making sure that you're getting paid for that extra work, because there is extra work involved with that for those kind of. The other part of this question this woman asked me is stallions. Do we allow stallions on our farm? And we don't. We're not really set up for stallions. We don't have the right fencing for them, and I don't want them in a stall all the time. I didn't want to do that to them. I want them to be able to go out, and we're just not set up for it. And our insurance, through who we have insurance from, I know that there would be extra fee for having stallions on the farm. And I just decided, there was no reason for us. We're not doing any breeding, and I didn't want to do it. So yeah, we've never had stallions here. A lot of people do it. We just don't. It's one of those little things that I just use to simplify my life. I guess you kind of start to decide, I don't want this or I don't want that, and those were some of the things that I decided I didn't want to do. Because if you have a stallion, you have to worry about other things, like them getting out, breeding a mare, which happens sometimes. So just something to think about. Okay.
I have an answer on that one about termination. Are you ready for it?
Oh, okay. Ask me the question again. What
It
was
was, how do you terminate a boarder even though they pay on time? And it has other issues were personality issues with other boarders.
Okay. Well, I have found, it kind of surprised me, because when we first were building our stable and we were getting ready to open, I honestly in my head had not even really given it thought to asking someone to leave. I just thought I was going to have this utopia barn that everything was perfect. I don't know. I just was living in some fantasy world. So I really just thought it was going to be good. And if I did have to ask someone to leave, I always thought it would be about money, that they couldn't pay their board. After all these years, money has never been it. It's never been it. I've had one person lose their job, and they had to sell their horses, and I kind of worked with them. But it was never about not paying board, because I never let it get to that point, and it never was. It's always been about personality issues, not following barn rules, maybe some unethical stuff, drama. Those are the things that destroy a boarding stable. I'll tell you, they just bring it down. And I have asked people to leave for those reasons, and it's because, how else to say it, I'll be really blunt, people like that, it's like a cancer. It'll just destroy your stable, the atmosphere. And I've had to talk to people and say I didn't feel this was a good fit anymore, because they were unhappy with how we did things, and then they were spreading it, and all of a sudden you've got 5 people unhappy about something. It just gets to be, it can blow up. And you get really good at kind of seeing the clouds coming. I didn't see anything at first until like the second year, and then I was starting to have all kinds of problems. Now, I honestly, you can feel it, and you can see the cloud coming on the horizon, and you kind of know there's a little problem. And I feel confident enough where I can just go to someone and talk to them and say, hey, do we have an issue here? I've learned to be a little bit blunt and say, this is what I'm hearing. This is, what's wrong. Let's talk about this. And sometimes it just doesn't get fixed. And at some point you have to decide what's more important. And I've always put the whole barn as a whole. I have to look at everybody. And I have asked people to leave because of that, because of drama, and because they're causing issues. They're creating chaos. They're undermining some of the way I do things and getting people to become disgruntled. And I have had conversations with them. During a couple times when it was kind of tough, I would tell my husband he had to go out with me. We would sit down with them and talk and just say, I don't think this is working. And sorry. And I would say this isn't working, and I'd say it's time. I think we need to part ways. And when I do that, I already have a handwritten, not handwritten, a typed up letter signed by David and me giving a 30-day notice with that date and everything on it, and I hand that to them. It's not fun. It never goes well. It just sucks. But you can't have someone, I mean, if you get to the point when you see a car pull in your barn and you're sick to your stomach and you don't want to go out there because you're dealing with this really strong personality or this person, you know, that's telling you something's not right. And it's your property. You live there. You are there all the time. You should be comfortable going into your barn. Now, are you going to have disagreements with people? Of course. Are you going to have people that you enjoy talking to more than others? Of course. But that is just part of life, and you have to learn to be forgiving, get along. But there's a point when it gets crossed, the line gets crossed, and when it does, then you know it's time for that person, that they're toxic and they need to leave. And it could be for lots of different reasons. But money has never been the reason I've asked someone to leave, really. It's always been other issues that somehow they get in their head, or they come and they like the way you do things, and all of a sudden 6 months later they don't like it anymore. So then you just know it's not a good fit. So did you have a question?
There's a couple more.
Okay.
One's on insurance and one's on special services. Which one do you want?
I got some other things here real quick.
Sure.
Okay. One of the things that was, I get asked a lot, so I want to talk about this real quick and then we'll go to those.
Okay.
And this is actually about special services too. Actually ask the question about special services because I think that's right up here with this.
What special services do you charge for? Blanketing, grooming, non-standard feed?
Okay. This is the question I was asked by someone. How do you deal with special needs horses when giving a tour? Obese horses, horses with eye visions, can't be turned out on pasture, hay nets, soaking hay, back shoes. How do you deal with that? Do you deal with it? Do you charge for it? And yours was
how much? What special services do you charge for, like blanketing, grooming, or non-standard feed?
Okay. So first of all, how you start your business will probably change over the course of the first couple of years, because when you first start, you're going to want to say yes to all these things, the blanketing and all of it, and you're going to want to include it in the board, and you're going to think this is great, and then you realize how time consuming and how much work it is. And when you look at it, you have to look at it as if you're getting paid. Well, all of a sudden, you know, you're getting paid $2 an hour. It's like you're not making any money, but you're working 13-hour days. So, when you're giving a tour, you want to have a sheet that you can give people, and you want to be really specific. And sometimes it takes a while to know what you can do and what you can't offer. As far as me, special needs horses, you're going to have so many horses with all kinds of little needs, all different kinds of things going on. And how do you navigate that? I think personally, it takes a couple of years and different types of horses to know what you want to do, what you want to include, what you don't. And then it may even change 5 years down the road again, or 10 years. You may say, you know what, I can do that. I'm not going to charge for it, or I'm going to charge for that. But to get a really good solid foundation of what you want to do, I charge for blanketing. But when we opened, we didn't, and we changed that pretty quick. And that is pretty common with most boarding stables. They include it until they realize it's a lot of work, and then they realize, oh my gosh, this is very time consuming. What was the one? There was another one there.
Grooming, non-standard feed.
Oh, okay. So grooming, like if you're going to offer services like grooming or walking a horse, vet, holding for a vet or farrier, any of those special services, you can charge for those. You can include them. I do them all separately. I do kind of this a la carte thing. I have my standard board, and then all those extra services are all extra. And then the client can decide if they want to pay me to do it, or if they're going to have someone else do it. Sometimes they'll buddy up with a friend. And the reason being is I don't think people realize, I know I didn't, when you start doing all these things like holding for vets or farriers, if you have a big barn and you're holding for everyone's horses, you're going to be out in the barn for hours a month, lots of hours. And it's going to get old, especially when you have other stuff to do. So I charge for all those different things. And I give a sheet when someone's coming for a tour, and I give it to them and I show them what I do and what I charge for and what's included in it. So if they have a special needs horse, you might have a situation that comes up that is unique and you haven't dealt with it. And you could ask other people and see how they've dealt with it. I think trends are going to come through the years. And like, for instance, when we first built 15 years ago, no one was really using hay nets at all. I'd not even heard of it. Now, a lot of people use hay nets. That's something that's newer. And, you know, you have to decide, do you want to do a hay net, or are you going to do it just in medical situations? And these are different trending things that people will see come and go. You can charge whatever you want on those, but just be clear when you're giving a tour so there's no surprises to the boarder if you don't offer something. And, you know, the truth is, when you're starting a boarding stable, you're going to have some changes through the first couple of years. And you have to be prepared, because what you said yes to at the beginning is going to change for some things. And you might have some boarders who don't like those changes, and they might leave. And that's why I always tell people, you're going to start off your business and you'll probably have some turnover the first few years, and then it's going to start to level out. And it's going to level out because you're going to know what you can offer, what you don't want to do, what you're willing to do for free, what you're going to charge for. And the only way to do it is to just dig in and do it and see what works for your stable. Because if you have a smaller stable with only like maybe up to 10 horses, you might be able to offer some perks in there that I'm not going to offer with 34 horses, and vice versa. People that come to a larger barn need to understand, the boarders that come to a larger barn need to understand it's going to be run a little bit differently than a real small barn, because I'm not going to be out there 13 hours a day for all these horses. So I may not offer some of the same things that a smaller stable will offer. And that's my choice, and that's what I want you to get to, is the point where you know what you can say yes to. And if someone comes to your stable and they say, for instance, I'll give you a perfect example. I had a woman come here for a tour last summer, and I was actually quite shocked at how she ended up leaving. She came in, she had an older horse, and she wanted a hay net in the stall. And I said, well, tell me about the horse. You know, does the horse have issues? And medical issues, ulcers, stuff like that. And she said, no, but he likes a hay net. He just is always eating with a hay net. And I said, well, what does he do when he goes outside? Because when he goes outside, there's no hay net, and he eats just fine on the ground. But she wanted a hay net. She just felt like he would be very uncomfortable, and that was her words, he would be very uncomfortable and stress him out without a hay net. But she had never, this was not a vet prescribed thing. It was just her saying that. And I said to her, I said, well, we don't offer that here. And she goes, well, you won't do that for a senior horse. And I said, well, if they have certain medical issues, yes, of course. But if you're saying it because he emotionally needs it, I'm not going to do it. You know, anyways, she kind of got upset at me because she goes, well, you say you offer special services. I do, but I also have, it's my prerogative to say I don't want to do that. You know, I'm willing to do it if the horse has medical issues, but in a situation that the vet has prescribed. But I don't want to do it just when there's no reason to, when we feed plenty of hay. And I have a lot of senior horses here, and they do just fine without a hay net. So she ended up leaving. She's kind of upset with me, and that's okay. I knew it wasn't a good fit, and I didn't have to deal with it. So I guess that's why it is so important to really know what you can offer and what you can't.
I have a question that goes along with special needs.
Okay.
What happens when the horse requires these special needs, but the owners don't want to pay extra?
Then they need to leave. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. If they don't want to pay it and that's how you run your barn, then they're at the wrong barn. You know, there are barns all over, and every stable is going to offer different things. But what burns out a barn manager and a barn owner more than anything is doing stuff and you're exhausted and, you know, feeling like they're just sucking you dry. I feel blessed. I have the most wonderful boarders here. I don't feel like that at all. I don't feel, they know what we offer. They're willing to pay if something needs to get done. That is not a normal service. That's something extra. And I don't feel like I'm being sucked dry. I feel like they appreciate what David and I do. But if you're going to feel like that, if you're offering all these stuff, you have to remember it's a job. You can offer some of this stuff. If they don't want to pay and that's just how you do it, then maybe it's time they need to go. Now, I'll tell you a huge transition that is really hard for a lot of people to go through, especially for people that are changing things or have just purchased a stable that's already established, is when that barn has done these things for free for years and all of a sudden you're the barn owner or you've decided you're going to make these changes. It's a transition, and you can't fault your clients. They're used to that. They're used to having all this stuff done for free as included in the board. You can raise the board to cover the cost of all those services so that you can pay an employee so you have free time and you can get other stuff done. But it's still a job and it all takes time. If you're standing out there to get shoes on a horse and you're out there for an hour and a half holding it because the horse has 4 shoes and they have pads and borium on the shoe so the horse doesn't slip in the ice, that horse, the farrier could be with that horse for for an hour, over an hour. That is time that you're stuck there if you need to hold that horse. And so that's why I'm trying to express how important it is to really think these things through, because you're going to end up, what happens is down the road, you're going to find yourself becoming angry or bitter because you're sitting there holding the horse, not making any more money for it, and you have all this other stuff, or you have children and they need to, they're waiting for you to come in the house, or you are exhausted, or it's the whole thing. And that's why I do these webinars, is to get you to start really seeing your worth and all the things that you do for the care of these horses that you should get paid for. I just happen to separate them all out into separate cost. You can do it all under the umbrella of one whole cost. Just make sure you're getting paid, it's built into there. You know what I mean? That farrier is going to come out, could be every 5 or 6 weeks. You need to have that all built in there so that you are getting paid for your time, and your time is valuable. So that's why it's important to really think these things throughout, especially when you start giving tours. You just want to eliminate certain people that aren't going to be a good fit. And also, I do think once you get settled into how you do things at your stable, the word will get out. People will talk and they'll say, oh, this is how they do things there. And you'll start to get a reputation, and the most important thing will be the care of the horse. And then people will come and they'll be willing to accept, it may not be a perfect barn. It never is for anybody. But they'll say, okay, well, maybe the horses are in for a week here during the real cold spell. But boy, the rest of the year is great. They're willing to, sacrifice some of that. And if they want to pay you to walk their horse, they'll pay it. And it's okay. I mean, it is a business. So that's what I'm trying to get across. Did you have another question?
The last question was that insurance question.
Okay.
Do you have recommendations for insurance for a boarding facility?
What state are you in? Because I use Excalibur out of Wisconsin. His name is Tom, and he's in Heartland, Wisconsin, Excalibur. And I don't know, he might do part of the Midwest, I'm not sure. But I don't have any other recommendations. I know there's a lot out there, but I use him. I had 2 other insurance companies before him, and I finally got smart and switched to someone who understands. That's all he does is horse businesses, nothing else. So if you just have a house, he doesn't do that. And
Washington.
okay, I don't have, hi to Washington, I don't have anybody out there I recommend, but what I would say, I guess if I was you, is I would probably, you could call Heartland, Wisconsin and ask for Tom, or I think Pam is her name, she's a secretary, and you could say, hey, I'm in Washington, do you guys recommend, who would you recommend, or, for out here? I'm sure insurance companies talk to other people. Just get someone who understands the horse industry. You want to make sure you have care, custody, and control. Super important for liability, especially if someone feels you're negligent if a horse gets hurt or dies. So anyways, we are at 1 hour, and that flew by. You guys are awesome. Thank you for joining us. I will have this on my website, on YouTube, and also you can check out probarnmanagement.com. My books are all for sale on there. If you want to get into boarding or you have questions, this talks about so much in there. It's a huge book. I try to cover everything in there to get you started and have a foundation. And just remember, you're going to always be growing and learning, and if you make mistakes, it's okay. Just move forward, learn from them, and it gets easier. The job does get a lot easier. It settles out. If you just get rid of some of this stuff, kind of take care of it, figure out what you want to offer, it does get so much better, and that I can attest to. Anyways, have a blessed week. We are cold here in Wisconsin, so pray for us that it warms up. And up in Canada, too, I'm sure you guys want to warm up, too. And God bless you all. And we'll see you next Monday, and I'll pick a topic. I'm not sure yet what we're going to talk about, but if you have something you want to talk about, send it to me, and we'll talk about it. And we'll see you all next Monday. Thank you. Bye.